Hello, everyone. A warm welcome and a heartfelt namaste to all of you. I, Anuradha Sharda, would like to thank all of you for watching my videos, writing in your comments and your suggestions. Today we have with us James Braha back again, and it's a pleasure to have you back again with us, James.
Thank you.
And
I
for all our viewers and lovers, I'd just like to say that yes, please do release that breath that you were holding on to because James' book is finally out and out like how. So, James, I would like you to show them the book, both the books, the edition that was before and the now, so you can everybody can understand the difference between both the editions. It's a lovely place to be. This is the new one, right, James?
Yeah, this you could see it says revised and
And
expanded
expanded.
2020. But here's what you have to see. You have to see the difference in the size between
These two
the
books.
the one from 1985 and the one from 2020. And by the way, I should say this up front that this right now, or at least yesterday, was not being sold in Amazon India, but we did click on to say to sell it worldwide. So I'm going to keep checking. I'm not sure why it's taking longer, but it will be on Amazon India. The this one, the Art and Practice in the hard
Uh-huh.
form, not the ebook. This is on
Already
Amazon
done India. Yeah.
already. So it means that the ancient Hindu will
Uh-huh.
eventually get there. I just don't know how long it takes, but if it takes another 2 days, if it's not there in 2 days, I'm going to be calling them and pushing them because we told them to sell it in India. My God, my biggest clients are in India.
Uh, okay, so this is a beautiful book, and we are going to definitely make sure that we get a hard copy of it in India also. And
And I think I'm
James, what is
always
the difference? What is the difference between the two books that we can
I
cut?
have a I have a lot to say about that. But first let me say that I think I will always live with a sense of embarrassment. I thought this book would be out in April, May. There's so many videos saying, "Oh, the book is almost out." I thought it would be. But every time I would come across something, I'd say, "Oh, I could say that better." Oh, I completely redid the analysis of all the famous horoscopes. And it's funny because I remember when the book came out, it was just everywhere. People were loving it and saying how great it was. And there was one review and it said, and he also has an explanation of famous horoscopes with threadbare explanations. And I thought, threadbare explanations? I thought they were great explanations. But 35 years later, I look at them and I go, oh my God, I didn't know in 1985 when I wrote it what I know in 2020. Now, when I started astrology in the late 70s with Western astrology, the best astrology book was by Isabel Hickey. I think it still is the best Western
Yes,
astrology book.
yes, yes. Isabel Hickey is my all-time favorite. She's my all-time
It's
favorite.
wonderful. I actually studied with her for a little bit, but
Oh,
in any case, I remember
lucky
I
you.
got I got the book and I started reading it, and I had all these other books. I had lots of other books. This one, I said, "Oh my God!" First of all, I said, "How does this woman know so much about so many different
Things.
parts of the Western system? How does she know so much?" But then I realized, oh, she's 70. She's been in the field for 30 or 40 years. I started, late 20s, early 30s. She probably started at 20. I mean, and I said to myself, I'm just going to take this book and memorize it. I'm going to study it and memorize it. If I know everything that's in that book, I'll be a genius astrologer. And that turns out to be impossible. You can't do it. You can read it. And anyway, so that is the difference between my original book and the revised edition. It's not it's not that there's tons of new material. It's that the material that is in there is way updated. The planets in the houses are more experiential. I took out, first of all, when I wrote the original book, I went by what I was taught and I went by what was in books. I didn't want to add my own. I mean, I added a little bit of my own stuff, no doubt, but I didn't want to change too much. And as the years went by, I was just, I felt so bad that the planets, when there were planets in the 8th house and the 12th house, I would say, this is bad, this is a disaster, you're going to die early, all these terrible things, not realizing that, in those astrology books that I used as references, they ignore the obvious. Well, in this book, I don't ignore the obvious. So people that read, like for 30 years, I've gotten people that have planets in the 8th or 12th house calling me up. Hey, is my life going to be horrible? Because I read it's going to be horrible. I was dying to change that. And I swore to people over 30 years, I said, if I could go back in time, I would delete the section on marakas, because I get so many phone calls. Am I going to die? I have a maraka period. And I'd say the maraka periods occur every 3 or 4 years. You would have died 30 times already if a maraka period killed you. But I couldn't delete it in this book. Why are you laughing?
Because the way you're saying it reminds me of somebody or some people who are so much used to, putting a fear of God, or rather fear of astrology in others.
Yeah.
Maharaka period. This transit is not bad. This is causing so much of problems. And for the love of me, I keep asking people that, astrology is something which we're supposed to get others rid of the fear, or asking them to be rational or be precautionary, and not creating so much of hullabaloo about everything, every
You
Maharaka
know,
period.
you know, I do these YouTubes. They usually get about 3 or 4 thousand views.
Right.
One day I did a YouTube for Vanita, VL
Yeah,
Astrology.
right.
And she said, what are you going to talk about? I said, I'm going to talk about Rahu and Ketu. She fell off her chair. I thought, what's going on? She said, oh my God, Rahu-Ketu. I said, what's going on? The YouTube on Rahu-Ketu got 30,000, I think it's up to 40,000 views. I said, why? She said, oh, because Rahu and Ketu is this big fearful thing, blah,
Mm.
blah, blah. Anyway, anyway, so this new book basically incorporates, I got rid of the things that I had put in that made sense by, this house means this and this planet means that, but it doesn't work so much. So I put in a lot more of the experiential
Yeah,
things.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's what you have seen working over the period of years. And if you put that down, that's so
You
much
take
beautiful.
you take Venus in the ninth house. I mean, it's only recently, I've been in this 30, 40 years, but it's only recently I came to realize these people with Venus in the ninth house, their gurus treat them like a lover. Their gurus treat them like a lover. In other words, people with Venus in the ninth house, they have stories. My guru pulled me aside and gave me information he didn't give anybody else. So also placements like Saturn in the third house, it makes a person depressed. It makes the person not depressed, pessimistic. There's a difference.
Hmm. Hmm.
Pessimistic.
Hmm.
It's just something that I found from experience. They're very pessimistic. They also have troubles, serious troubles with not just siblings, but all relatives. Now, I'm not saying everybody, but this is the way astrology works. Nothing is 100%, but most people with Saturn in the third house are pessimistic, stubborn-minded, but they have troubles with all of their relatives. And then things like Mars in the second house. I was writing about Mars in the second house, how the person's aggressive and they argue. And then it suddenly also hit me that Mars in the second house aspects the fifth house, which makes the mind hot. So these are the kinds of things in the book that are now there that explain, things
The
like that. Another one,
reasoning. Yeah. The
another
reasoning.
one, another one was, Mars in the seventh house. I've noticed that not everybody, but like a lot of times Mars in the seventh house can mean that a spouse dies. Okay.
Right.
But what I found from experience is that in many cases, not all, but in many cases, the person with Mars in the seventh house is present when the spouse dies. This is a very specific. My brother had it. He's one of the people. His wife died in his arms. And then I was talking the other day about when I was doing the horoscope of Jackie Kennedy, Jackie Onassis in the book.
Hmm.
I completely rewrote the analysis of these 14 famous people plus a new section on Donald Trump, 10 pages. When I got to the Jackie Onassis, you could see in the natal chart why she gets a powerful, wealthy husband. What you couldn't find was her sitting in a car watching her husband right in
being
front of her
shot,
die.
die.
Now, she has a 2:30 from memory birth time. Now, the place to go, I want to say this online, the place to go to get accurate birth data, and by the way, no one source will be always accurate, but the best one is you can put in the Lois Rodden, Rodden, the Lois Rodden database, which is also called Astro Dienst.
Yes, as a
Astro
data bank.
Dienst,
Yes,
Dienst.
DNST.
Anyway, so when you go in there, the data for Jackie Onassis is not AA, it's A. It's not perfect, it's below perfect. If you take, and it's from memory, so 2:30 is an approximation. You back that up 10 minutes, not the natal. I mean, you back up the whole chart. But when you look at the Navamsha, and the chart is backed up to 220 or earlier, the seventh house has Mars in the seventh, in Libra, not a good sign for Mars.
Right.
The fallen sun in the seventh house in Libra, and the seventh house ruler Venus in Virgo. I mean, the seventh house of the Navamsha is horrific, and that Mars in the seventh house, I'm telling you, it's so. These are the things that are in the book that give you these little things that
Take
only
you an
it takes.
experience.
It takes, yeah, exactly. Now, another thing about this book is that for people that are learning astrology and practicing on friends, okay, in this book now, whenever there's a bad planet in a house, the moon is in the 8th house, the moon is in the 12th house, I give the description, and underneath that, it'll say, the person should wear a high quality 2-carat pearl. They should keep Mondays as a religious or spiritual day. They should do yagyas or mantras for the moon. If it's Mercury, that it'll say they should have pictures of Lord Vishnu around the house. In other words, there's explanations for how they can help people. They don't have to figure it out for themselves. It's right there. Okay. There's all sorts of things like that are new. Another is planets in the first house. If Saturn's in the first house, it gives a long explanation, and then it says the person is likely to have a Vata constitution. They should not eat certain foods. If the person is Kapha, if they have the moon in the first house, they are Kapha. They're allowed to have caffeine and alcohol. The person who is Pitta, who has Mars or Sun in the first house, is a Pitta constitution. They should avoid hot spices. There's all these explanations. This is what took me. I kept thinking, well, I'm just revising the book. It'll be done any day now. And I kept coming up with more and more and more explanations that really needed to be there. Another thing is, I wrote the book in 1985, and I had good birth data for John Lennon and Lyndon Johnson. But John Lennon has one of the worst Jupiters in history, and Lyndon Johnson has one of the worst ninth houses in history. When you have that, the birth data gets messed up because the person doesn't deserve to get higher knowledge. So the ninth house is bad. So now there's questions about Lyndon Johnson's birth time. So in that explanation, I spend like 2 pages showing why it is the Cancer ascendant. And I'm just going to give you the most basic part of it. There's 2
Sure.
parts. One, he hated his father. They fought constantly. It was a terrible relationship. When you use the Cancer ascendant, the ninth house has Saturn, and the ninth house ruler Jupiter is conjunct with Mars and the Sun. It's just a terrible ninth house. Not the case when you use Leo. Secondly, and this is really important, because when I started with Jyotish, I wasn't that good at saying how many brothers and sisters and how many. If you use the Cancer ascendant for Lyndon Johnson, that shows that he would have 4 or 5 younger siblings, which he does. If you use the Leo ascendant, which now they're thinking, oh, the birth time might be this, there's no younger siblings. You can exaggerate and say, okay, we'll take Rahu and make it 1, or, but so there's these long explanations of how to rectify the ascendant is very, very, it's just, there's so much.
Interesting. Interesting.
It's interesting, but very useful. Another thing is like I'll be talking about Mars in the fifth house, and then I'll say if Mars is exalted, what it means, right? Mars in the sixth house, and if it's exalted, what does it mean? At the bottom of that, it'll say, whenever Mars is exalted, whenever, no matter what chart, when Mars is exalted, the person has control of their temper. They have control of their sexual desires. When Jupiter is, so I'll be talking about Jupiter, and Jupiter's fallen in the third house, what it means. Jupiter's fallen in the eighth house, what it means. And then under it, it'll say, when Jupiter is fallen, whenever Jupiter is fallen, the person has to watch out for arrogance, for thinking they know everything when they really know. They're just things that teach you, so that every time you see a fallen Jupiter, an exalted Mars, what it means. So the book is it's very funny because this project went on so long, and I didn't mind the work. What I minded was that I couldn't get to the sense of completion. I mean, really, I started revising this in 2019 for the Bulgarian edition, and then when I did it for the US, it took forever. And
Can I
part of me
just
says,
say something here, James?
yeah,
You were trying to fit a house in a small suitcase.
I was, yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway,
With your wealth
so
of information, all that you've gathered, and it's a beautiful thing that you want to pass it on to the next generation, or for that matter, anybody who's willing to listen to it or read it
you know
with
what?
love. Yeah.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it for this generation. The reason is I said, who's going to buy this revised book? They're going to think, oh, I already have it, right?
Mm.
I did this book thinking, when I leave this planet, I want to leave the best introductory book. And it's funny because if you look at the great astrologers, very few of them write in their 60s. They'll write articles, they won't write books. They don't need it, they don't need the recognition, so they don't do it. This is the biggest tragedy, because that's when they know the most. So I said, I'm going to do this so that when I leave, there will be this book that says it. But there's many teachings in the book. One of the things is, my guru, when I was studying meditation in the 70s, my guru used to say, the teacher learns more than the student. The teacher always gains more than the student. You know what I gained from this? Going over the entire book and taking out the techniques that don't work and saying this technique doesn't work, doing all that and writing. You know who I am. I didn't study for 10 years with a guru like some astrologers. I do it like my mentor Padia, just all by experience, what works, get rid of what doesn't work. And so I live with this commitment to make the astrology teachings as practical, so that when the astrologers are doing their work, they will be accurate. Not they'll say it and people will say, oh, that's great, but it's not. Trying to make it accurate. But at the end of the project, I came to realize, no matter how much I write of what I know, and I don't know everything, of course, it's a lot I don't know, but even if I put everything that I've learned in all these years, it'll never be enough.
Right.
The student has to eventually make it their own. They have to find their own way. It became crystal clear to me that the Indian system is way more of a psychic platform. The horoscope is more of a psychic platform. And let me tell you why. In the book, I explain, I say, look, there are so many horoscopes to use. There's the natal chart. There's the Bhava chart.
This is the
There
division
is the Chandra Lagna chart.
chart. Surya
Then
Lagna.
there's people using the Navamsha as a natal chart. This is 4 horoscopes. When you have 4 horoscopes, you can find whatever you want. Oh, he's got a bad marriage? I'll find it. Oh, he's got a bad career? I'll find it. Because you have so much, you have too much. Now, in the ancient Hindu system, it's fine to have 15 or 20 charts. You can use a Ruda Lagna. You can use, there's so many different things you can use. but you're using them psychically. That's not what I'm about. I am the people that like my work, they like it because they want to know what actually works. You can't teach the psychic method of here. There's 500 yogas. Use them when they pop up in your mind. That's the true Hindu Vedic system. And so therefore, astrologers, you take from each teacher and you find your own way. And that was a huge lesson for me, because I'm always complaining about this astrologer said this and it's not true, and this one said that and it's not true. But that's not fair. That is not fair. They have found their own way, as long as it works, as long as it's accurate.
That's a
Um,
beautiful, that's such a beautiful, way to explain your own book. And at the end, you also admit that there is a doubt that can pop up in the reader's mind, and how to go about solving that doubt of doing it your own way, accepting it, and doing it through a lot of practical experiences.
something I also came across is that I finally use now the ninth house and the 10th house as the father. So when you read the original book, I had studied with Santanam, who was from South India. So the ninth house was the father.
Right.
Then I studied with Padia, who said the 10th house was the father.
Uh,
But I had already practiced for a year and a half with the ninth house as the father.
hmm,
So when I wrote the book, I used the ninth house as the father, even though Padia uses the 10th. So as time went on, it finally has gelled. You have to use both. So in the book, it'll say Jupiter in the 10th house means this for the father, Jupiter in the ninth house means this for the father. It uses both. Both. Another thing was Dikbala. So in the original text, it would say, Mars is in the 10th house and it gets Dikbala. This is great for Dikbala is part of Shadbala, which is a
yes, yes,
mathematical system.
yes. Mathematically, how to explain things. Yes.
Yeah. So you would read the book and say, oh, Mars is in the 10th house, it gets Dikbala. Therefore, Mars is the best position for the 10th house.
Right.
Saturn is in the 7th house and it gets Dikbala. So Saturn in the 7th
Uh,
house is the best place for Saturn. This is nonsense. The last thing on Earth you want is Saturn in the 7th house. So what does Dikbala actually mean? It doesn't mean that Moon in the 4th house is the best placement for the Moon, for 4th house matters. It means the planet becomes strong. You don't want Saturn in the 7th house. It harms married life. But it gets Dikbala, so it becomes powerful. So when you have a Saturn dasha, the effects are intense. And the houses that Saturn rules, if it's in the 7th house, become more powerful because it's gained power. So those are the kind of things that I try to explain. Also, I added in this book, I've spoken about this a lot in the last year, that when children have a very activated, well, first of all, that the 8th house is sexual. First of all, that. In the Hindu system, the 12th house is sex. In the Western system, the 8th house is sex. But in my experience, the 8th house is sex as well as the 12th. When you find people with a lot of activated 8th house planets and such, the sexual energy will be intense. And I have said in YouTubes, but now I've written it in the planets
book.
and houses, when Jupiter's in the 8th house, when Venus is in the 8th house, when Moon, you have to keep an eye on your children because they have so much energy, enthusiasm, excitement, a sexy appearance. If you leave them alone, sexual predators will find them faster than anybody. Marilyn Monroe has a Raja Yoga Mars Jupiter.
Jupiter in, eighth house, and she had fallen
Not
prey.
just not just Jupiter, Mars,
Mars and Jupiter. Yes, I know.
and it's a Raja Yoga Mars, Raja Yoga
Right.
Mars Jupiter, and this
Yes,
and the
and
8th house
eighth house
ruler
ruler.
is Saturn, which is exalted and
Yes,
aspected by
better,
Jupiter.
better.
This is an
Yes,
8th house that doesn't quit. She was abused as a child,
yes.
sexually abused. So I write that in, you know, in the book. The other thing is, like I'll be talking about an afflicted, I'll say if Venus has fallen, and then I give the explanation, and then it'll say whenever Venus has fallen, watch for the throat, thyroid, reproductive system, or Mercury has fallen. Whenever Mercury has fallen, watch for the lungs, intestines, nervous system, and skin. So that the astrologers, first of all, they have something to read to their clients when they're learning. And second of all, it's going to sink in. When I learned astrology, nobody told me, when they said, oh, health, you look for the sixth house. Nobody told me, by the way, if a planet is massively afflicted, that planet's health areas are going to be bad. So it removes so much of the work for the student,
Yeah.
removes so much. And it gives the people that have seen the book before it came out, they said, oh my God, I love that you tell them, what to do when there's a problem, to have the statues of Shiva, to keep that day sacred, things like that. So so I'm really proud of it. And one part of me is always thinking, gee, it doesn't really have any brand new sections, so it's not really, is it really that different? Yes, it's that different. It took a year to do. It better be
It's different. Yeah, it
better
is
be very
different.
different. Yeah.
Yes, it is different. So it's a beautiful thing that we've come to know from James today. And James, I too am relieved that the book is out, because I've been asking you, pestering you, excuse me, James, when is it going to be out? Next month, Anuradha, it's going to be out. And then again, next month was next month. So I'm happy about that. Really
You
happy.
know, I spend my life trying to find the truth and to tell the truth. I'm telling you, when I'm on my deathbed, I'm going to be thinking, oh, I told those people the book would be in 2 weeks.
No, but better late than never. And it has come to a, when you look at the book itself, you see the width and the breadth of the book. It shows that it has got a lot of substance behind it, and that is why it took times. It take good things.
The
All good things take time.
the other thing, this is the last thing I'll say. The other thing is that, when I wrote the Art and Practice, when I wrote this book, The Art and Practice, this one was written in 2000, and it goes through how to analyze the horoscopes. This is 20 years later. It's more
Intimate.
substantial.
Yes.
And if you are serious about practicing, you read that section over and over and over and over. And I will never forget this as long as I live. I spent 10 pages on, probably, I don't know, 7, 8 pages on Lyndon Johnson. Some of the charts I spend 10, 12 pages, others 3 or 4. And it's a really good analysis of Johnson's horoscope. Lyndon Johnson is a man who was raised in abject poverty, abject poverty, had a very, very poor education, did not want to go to college. His parents kept begging him. He said, I'm not going. And then he finally realized, I've got to go to college in order to get where I want to go, because I want to be president. He wanted to be president from a young age. And he eventually went to college, got a really lousy education. He just wanted the degree. And one day I was looking at the horoscope. Lyndon Johnson cheated. He cheated in so many elections. And when he got to college, he didn't do anything in college except he wanted to take all the people that were the class president and people in high positions. He wanted to knock them down and get his friends into the president of the school and all. And he did it. And how did he do it? He did it by Machiavellian cheating and manipulating and maneuvering, which is how a guy who has nothing and no decent education gets to the presidency. I'm looking at the chart and suddenly it strikes me. Ketu is aspecting the ascendant ruler, the sun, the moon, Jupiter, Mars. Ketu, his natal Ketu was tightly aspecting everything. Now, that could make a person spiritual and metaphysical, or it could make them really good at manipulating and maneuvering.
Mm.
Those are, I would never have even seen the aspects of Ketu 20 years ago. 20 I might have, but 25, when I wrote the book, my teachers weren't even using those aspects.
This is phenomenal. So we do need to write in, and we'll get back to you if we do not find that on Amazon India for sure, James.
Yeah. And they can contact me at jamesbraha@gmail.com, and I'll, if you don't find the book, but it should be there.
So that was a beautiful summary, if not a summary, a glimpse, I should say, of the book that James has put in a lot of effort during the pandemic to begin with, and it's been a beautiful journey for him and for us also, because we've been talking about the book for so long. So finally, when it's out, book your copies. I have already booked mine. And as we go ahead in the next session, we are going to take James on to talking about Pluto. As we will be going into the next session of Pluto and Pluto through the houses and also Pluto with the planets, do keep a watch for this space. Till we meet with you again, James, thank you so much.
Thank you.